Philadelphia in the 1600s was not yet the bustling colonial capital it would become. This was a city in its infancy, a bold experiment in urban planning and religious tolerance carved from the wilderness of Pennsylvania. Thanks to advanced AI technology, we can now recreate these earliest scenes with unprecedented accuracy. By analyzing period maps, sketches, and written accounts from the city's founding years, we're able to show how Philadelphia likely looked in its first decades, the simple buildings, forest clearings, and the determined settlers who built a city from nothing. This is the story of Philadelphia's birth, a moment when vision met reality on the banks of the Delaware River. Before Philadelphia existed, this land belonged to the Lenape people, who had lived along these riverbanks for thousands of years. The area they called Coaquanic, meaning grove of tall pines, was rich with game, fertile soil, and access to waterways that connected the interior to the Atlantic coast. Swedish and Dutch settlers had established small trading posts here in the 1640s and 1650s, but nothing approaching a permanent city. The land remained largely forested, punctuated only by Native American paths, scattered farmsteads, and the occasional trader's cabin. This was the landscape William Penn encountered when he received his charter from King Charles II in 1681. A vast wilderness waiting to be transformed. William Penn arrived in his new colony in October 1682 with a vision unlike anything attempted in the English-speaking world. Penn, a Quaker who had suffered persecution in England, imagined a city built on principles of religious tolerance, fair dealing, and rational order. He brought with him surveyor Thomas Home, who laid out a grid plan that would become Philadelphia's defining feature. Penn's instructions were specific: wide streets to prevent the spread of fire, generous plots so every house could have gardens and orchards, 5 public squares evenly distributed, and the city stretched between 2 rivers, the Delaware and the Schuylkill. This was not a medieval tangle of narrow lanes, but an Enlightenment vision of urban life, orderly, healthy, and egalitarian. The earliest structure of consequence was the Blue Anchor Tavern, already standing when Penn arrived. This simple timber building at the foot of what would become Dock Street served as Philadelphia's first public house, courthouse, and meeting hall all in one. Here, Penn conducted his initial land transactions, settlers gathered for news, and the rough work of founding a city took place over mugs of ale and cider. The Blue Anchor represented frontier pragmatism, a single building serving multiple civic functions until proper institutions could be built. Around it, the first streets took shape: Front Street along the Delaware waterfront, High Street running westward into the forest, and the beginnings of the grid that Home had surveyed. Within months of Penn's arrival, hundreds of settlers began constructing homes along the Delaware riverfront. These first Philadelphia houses were simple affairs: timber frames filled with wattle and daub, or logs chinked with clay, topped with thatched or wooden shingle roofs. Nothing like the brick Georgian townhouses that would define the city in later decades. Most were single-story structures with a main room for cooking, eating, and gathering, a sleeping loft above, and perhaps a separate room for storage or trade. Chimneys were built of stone or brick when available, wood and clay when not. The streets between these houses were unpaved tracks, muddy in rain, dusty in summer, carved through tree stumps that workers were still clearing. The Letitia Street house, built around 1683, survives as one of Philadelphia's oldest structures. This modest brick dwelling, compact but well-crafted, represents the ambitions of early settlers who could afford more than timber. 2 stories, a steep roof, small windows with leaded glass, and a massive chimney for heating and cooking. Houses like this were still rare in the 1680s, symbols of permanence in a settlement where most buildings remained temporary. The fact that it was built in brick at all, that material had to be manufactured locally or imported, marked its owner as someone of means investing in Philadelphia's future.
By the mid-1680s, the waterfront along the Delaware had transformed into a working port. Wharves extended into the river, built of timber pilings and planking, where ships from England, the Caribbean, and other colonies unloaded tools, cloth, seeds, livestock, and more settlers. In return, they carried away the products of Pennsylvania's forests and farms: timber, furs, grain, and salted meat. The waterfront was perpetually crowded with sailors, merchants, craftsmen, and laborers speaking English, Dutch, Swedish, German, and other languages. This diversity was precisely what Penn had envisioned, a refuge for persecuted religious minorities from across Europe. Quakers certainly, but also German Mennonites, Dutch Reformed, English Anglicans, and others, all guaranteed the freedom to worship as they chose. The Friends Meeting House, built in 1685 on High Street, became the spiritual center of Philadelphia's Quaker community. Unlike churches with steeples and ornamentation, the meeting house was deliberately plain, a simple rectangular building with rows of benches facing inward, reflecting Quaker beliefs about equality and the presence of God in all people. Here, settlers gathered in silence, speaking only when moved by the Spirit, conducting the community's religious and civic business. The meeting house was more than a place of worship. It was where disputes were mediated, marriages recorded, and decisions made about the colony's direction. Penn himself attended meetings here during his years in Philadelphia, sitting among his fellow friends without ceremony or special privilege.
The great treaty elm stood near what is now Kensington, marking the site where Penn reportedly met with Lenape leaders to negotiate the peaceful purchase of land. Whether this specific meeting occurred exactly as later accounts described remains debated by historians, but the principle was real. Penn insisted on fair payment for native lands, refusing to simply claim territory by royal charter as other colonies did. He learned the Lenape language, met with their leaders as equals, and established trade relationships rather than immediately resorting to force. This approach, however imperfect by modern standards, created an unusual period of peace between settlers and native peoples in early Pennsylvania, a stark contrast to the violence that characterized many other colonial frontiers. By 1690, Philadelphia's population had reached approximately 2,000 people, a remarkable growth for less than a decade. The city now extended several blocks inland from the Delaware, though settlement remained concentrated along the eastern riverfront. Most residents were artisans, laborers, merchants, and farmers, drawn by Penn's promise of land ownership, religious freedom, and economic opportunity. The city had established basic institutions, including a monthly court, a market at High and Second Streets, and a growing number of workshops producing everything from barrels to shoes to furniture. Yet Philadelphia remained a work in progress, streets half-cleared, buildings half-finished, and vast stretches of Penn's grid still covered in forest. This was Philadelphia in its first decade, rough, ambitious, and optimistic, a Quaker experiment in tolerance taking root in the American wilderness. The grand civic buildings, elegant townhouses, and bustling commerce of the 18th century lay decades in the future. But the foundations were laid here, in these simple timber houses, muddy streets, and the determination of people who believed they were building something unprecedented. Let us know in the comments what you'd like to see recreated next. Another American city, a different moment in Philadelphia's story, or perhaps another colonial settlement taking shape. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the past.